I'm going to share with you the 6 things you must consider when starting a podcast this year. This is the Amplify Your Business podcast with Matt J Hanham, where I have candid conversations with inspiring people and turn topics inside out to help you get amplified in business and in life. Welcome everyone. This is an Inside Out episode today, and I'm going to be discussing the 6 things you must consider when starting a podcast this year. Is it 6? I think it's 6. I wrote a quick list of things, so when we get to the end, you can let me know if I actually end up saying 6 things or 12 things. But anyway, these are the 6 things. Look, I get asked a lot about podcasting. I do a lot of podcasting. I mean, in the last 48 hours, I've recorded, including a couple today, I'll be recording, I think 11 or so podcasts in like 2 to 3 days, which is pretty extreme even for me. But I really enjoy it. And podcasting can be a really powerful tool for your business, and it can be a really powerful tool as a business, if that's what you want to do. So the thing about podcasting is really, it makes a lot of sense to stop and sort of consider where things are at the start. So I think a lot of people just start these things. I mean, one of the great stats around podcasting is that something like over 90% of podcasts only have up to 7 episodes. So 7 episodes is about the time when an excited person or a couple of excited people go, hey, let's record a podcast. Let's go. Let's start talking. And then they get to about 7 and they just go, They haven't thought about editing. They haven't thought about what they're talking about. They haven't thought about how much work it's going to be. They haven't thought about their purpose. And sadly enough, that was me in 2015. I think it was 2015 when I started my first podcast with a business colleague at the time, and that was called Visible in Stereo. You probably won't find it out there, but if you do, you'll enjoy a laugh. It's Actually, I'll cut in the quick intro into this for you so you can have a listen to how great we thought we were.
Yo, crank up the volume. You are listening to the official Visible in Stereo podcast. Get ready for the latest news, booze, and reviews on everything digital marketing, business, and entrepreneurship. Introducing your hosts, Matt Hanham and Bob Jones.
And we lasted a grand total of 4 20-minute episodes, and that was that. So we had issues in our vision, we had issues in why we were doing it, and it literally only made it to 4. So number one thing you must consider is to choose a topic that gets you excited and that you'll commit to. Now, you might be choosing to do a 10 episode season once a year. That's cool. Maybe there's not so much commitment in that. Maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe you're a true crime buff. Maybe not. But most people I speak to and that talk to me are mostly business related. And the thing about those is they're probably better off having some more consistency, being either much longer in their release, let's say they're weekly, and so they want to release 30, 40, or even, to be honest, 52. I mean, I'd like to see business podcasts putting out a podcast every week, or, if you've any podcast really, if you've got the resource to be able to put out something regularly, because it's just what your listeners want to hear. So the thing is about putting out a podcast, let's say every week, is it's a lot of work. It's every week. And what happens if you want to go on holiday for 4 weeks? You've got to be organized and you've got to do the work up front, and you don't want to break that release schedule, because once you've actually built a following, they want to hear you, and it's really important that you keep going. So number one, choose a topic that you get excited about and you can really commit to. And that, if your career is really boring and you're just trying to create a podcast so you can sell more widgets or sell more whatever, well, you're probably going to be one of those 7 episode fatalities. It's probably not going to happen for you. So understand, is this something you want to do for the long run? Or is this just a 7 episode plan where you want to put some audio out? That's fine. But you have to choose your topic very wisely. You have to be excited and interested, and it has to be something you're willing to commit to, willing to suffer for. And when I say suffer, I mean the suffer, well, the word passion basically has suffering or to suffer in its, I guess, derivative into, I think it's back in the Latin term for it, and which I don't have top of mind right now, but passion means to suffer. And so if you're creating a podcast around your passion, that makes sense for you, and you are willing to suffer to grow this thing, because you're not going to have millions of listeners on day one unless you have 4 or 5 amazing guests and they're going to bring you straight out there and pump you out and leverage you to the world, and there you go. It's probably going to be a slow grind, and you better be committed. You better be committed to what you want and understand that you're in it for the long haul and there's a lot to do. Choose your topic and get excited about it. Commit to it, and then just define your show. So for yourself as much as your listeners, just understand, give it a description, give it some artwork, start to build out the brand, the feeling, understand what the show is and who is it for. This is where you start to dig into the audience. Who is your target audience? Are you producing content they want to see, hear, look at, feel? You need to basically think about what your show is for, who it's for. What is it giving them? What is it giving them that's different to what someone else is already giving them? And this is where you have to put the work. And if you might have noticed, we haven't started recording anything yet. You can start to record something and start to work out your voice. But the truth is, if you can nail these 2 areas, and I've put them across very broadly here, but you can nail those 2 areas, you'll be much better served when you move into these next steps. So, of the 6 things you must consider when starting, number 3 is you've got to consider some equipment. And this is where everyone gets it very, 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 very wrong. It doesn't really matter. If you get number 1 and number 2 right, the level of audio quality is not that important. Not at least to start anyway. So the other thing is, high level of quality audio equipment is not very expensive really either. I'm not saying it's cheap. I'm not saying anyone could just run out and buy it. But to get what's considered the pro stuff, you're really not looking at a significant sum of money. I'm in Australia. For $1,000, you can put a pretty good small pack of equipment together. And in the States, you're probably looking at round about that number or a little bit less, maybe $700 or $800. I mean, if you go to our Gumtree or your Craigslist or others around the world, you can also find a lot of equipment and probably halve that cost. And I'm talking about putting out gear that's going to put out professional quality, the kind of quality you're hearing from us, with a bit of luck, as long as I'm not spitting into the microphone or otherwise. But that's the pro level. On the bottom end of town, if you need to just record on your phone, do it. Doesn't matter. The number 1, number 2 thing is far more important. Defining the show, choosing the topic, putting it out to the right people, putting it out there for a reason. So I wrote a blog actually. So if you wanted to just Google podcast for beginners visible, you would probably quite quickly get pulled up to a blog that I wrote where I talk through some of the different podcast equipment and some of the basics, and that is more than enough. So if you want to head on over to that, you'll find some microphones, some different bits and pieces, what to look at, what we have. To a certain extent. But the truth is there's no real major problem. One of my podcasts, not this one obviously, but Simple Minds podcast, you can check that out anywhere at Simple Minds podcast or .com as well. It's 6 guys talking about things that guys don't really talk about, and trying to help people and share authenticity. We talk about masculinity, other all life, business, everything that men probably don't really share too much. But with that podcast, we were really committed to just putting out some great content and putting out content that was authentic. And for the first 9, maybe even 12 months, we had 2 lapel mics and a Zoom H4. So to put that into perspective, a lapel mic in Australia is like $50. And so we'd spent $100 there because I think they were both brand new. And we had a Zoom H4. I now am currently using the Zoom H6. And it's an amazing piece of equipment. That's about $500. But this Zoom H4, we bought secondhand off someone for $100. We had $200 worth of equipment. I actually think those little lapel mics people already had around anyway. And we put out nearly a year's worth of podcast on that. So we still got people listening. People liked what they heard. They didn't love that it was the best audio, but they've come to learn that all of a sudden we got better audio, and we've gradually upgraded a few times because there's quite a few people in a room, so it's lots of microphones, etc. But it's not that important. Grab some equipment, any equipment, just do something and get started. You'll figure it out as you go. Number 4 is to start to create a bit of a plan. Look, no one wants to hear the episodes or the same episode over and over again. And this is, I think, where most people die at 6 or 7 episodes going like, what is my show about? One thing that we do in our marketing agency, Visible here, is that we sort of do what we do, core topics, and we break down what are the key topics that we like to talk about. And then we break down what are the sort of subtopics, and we'll build that out over, 6 to 12 months, whether we're talking about blog posting or social media content or other things. And podcasting is the same. So we will understand that over the next, say, 3 months, I might talk about podcasting once or twice in a podcast or in a vlog, and then I might talk about, marketing or social media or different types of values that we have for business and business growth. I love talking about goal setting and, other factors that are all relevant, but we strategize that. And the reason why we do that is so we know what to talk about. Like if I just got in front of this microphone, constantly and not without a clue, without any form of plan. And we don't put hundreds of hours into planning. We just understand the topics and maybe a few key points and just get in there and talk. But you need to create a plan. Understand if you're creating a 10-episode series, understand if you're going every week. And if you're going to do that, figuring out who's going to be in that episode. Now, I love interviews. You probably love interviews too. So many podcasts are interviews. Figure out a plan just to get the guests in the room and get them recorded. If you can create that and create a system around delivery, so, hey, we put out episodes on Tuesdays, then you'll probably be well on your way. Number 5. So 5 out of 6. 5 out of 6. You finally record something. So you've got some equipment, you've got a topic, you've defined your show, you've got some artwork if that helps you. You've created a plan, you know what you want to talk about. You've broken it down into your major topics and you've broken it down into some minor topics. And topic 1, number 1. And by the way, when you go to record, the first episode really needs to be this. It needs to be, okay, what is this show? What is it about? Who does it go to? Who should listen and why? Now, I did not do this. So this was a while ago, but I did not have that information when I started. So that's maybe proof it doesn't matter. But it doesn't matter. You can survive it. But I promise you, people listen to your first episode. And even today, they'll go back and listen to your first episode. So if you can start by understanding, all those points above, and then you can deliver that in an episode, it's going to help you to frame what you're doing with your podcast and with your co-hosts if you have them. And it is also going to help the listener understand, why you're there. Why is it? What's it got to do with them? Like where are your connecting points? Like how are you guys similar and what, why should they listen to you? So you need to define that. And that's a great first episode, but this is when you start recording. I would recommend that you batch a few episodes before you start to go live. You'll probably get better anyway, but also it's just a good way to get started. So I think one of the first things I did is I started and I wanted to have a interview show. And this is an interview show in part. Obviously the Amplify Your Business podcast is partial interviews and partial inside outs that you're listening to right now. But what I did is I went to a business conference and I organized for 7 or 8 people to be interviewed by me, and I just did it. So that I then came back to Perth where I live. I got on the plane, flew back. I really wanted to start this podcast, but I had like 7 episodes ready to go. So we cut them up, got them organized, edited it, and we're like, well, I've started now. The momentum was there. And the key word there is momentum. So record some audio. I would definitely think about recording a handful of episodes at least just to get you sort of over that hump of starting, and then set a strict release date. That probably should be like 5A, but set a strict release date. Is it every Friday? Is it every Thursday? Is it every fortnight on Thursdays? Just stick to that as a deadline. I have let go of one of our sort of consistency and rhythm once, and it was it was detrimental. People did not like it. It was clear. We lost listeners, and it took some time for listeners to come back because I went through a patch where I got very busy in other things, and despite my passion for this podcast, I let it go. And I think it was about six weeks or so where I didn't actually put a new episode out, and it matters. So understand. And that it matters in that case because I was putting out a consistent, regular series. Whereas if people knew it was the last episode in the season, that's a different story. They'll come back to it next time. I mean, this is not a true crime podcast. This is a business podcast. People want to hear from me. They want to hear about tips and tricks and stats and hear great interviews. And that's what this is. So it wasn't well received when I didn't do it. So record some audio. Figure that out for yourself. Just do a couple of test runs. Like even just record the first one with no intention of putting it out if you like. Just get comfortable with the process. So the final thing that you must consider when starting a podcast this year is obviously the editing and publishing of your episodes. So basically, there's a few ways you can do it. You can go on Fiverr and get someone to help you. You can just put it out yourself. Look, are you going to get everything technically perfect? No, but at least you might get started and you'll work your way into the environment. So there's obviously agencies, there's people that can do the whole production and everything for you. We can do that too for you, but you need to obviously invest in that. I wouldn't recommend it as probably the starting point unless you're a bigger brand or business and ready to go to the market properly. If you're raw, authentic, you want to start a podcast, I would just look at doing it yourself, maybe a bit of help from Fiverr, find someone around you, from a film or some student who has a little bit of understanding of one of the audio programs, or just learn it yourself. Edit them up a little bit. Do what you have to and just get out there and launch it to the public. I haven't dug into platforms and that in this sort of 6 steps, but my top ranking, all favorite place to start by putting the podcast for distribution is Libsyn. So libsyn.com. Look, it's where a lot of the best podcasters in the world are launching or are hosting their audio. It's very reasonably priced as far as I'm concerned. We have multiple podcasts that are being hosted there and we've never had any issues with the audio hosting. It also allows you to put it in basically through their feed into iTunes and many, many other places. So you can get a really great distribution off the back of it. And yeah, that's right. So look, that is what I would recommend you doing. So that's libsyn.com, libsyn.com. But look, just start editing, publishing, pick that release date and get moving. The key or the number 7 or whatever that is really here is just to take some action and get moving on it. So I have put a lot of weight in the top, in the framework, in the getting organized, but you should definitely commit there and then just get moving, create some action. Don't worry about spending too much money. Don't worry about any of those other things. If you really want this, it's right there for you right now. And I'm suggesting that you could probably start to make some traction today. So please do that. And look, if you've got any questions, don't hesitate to hit me up on wherever you've obviously consumed this. You can message me there, or if you can hit me up on Instagram at Matt J Hanham, on YouTube. You can write a comment against this episode, Facebook, wherever you like, or you can just shoot me an email at Matt, MATT at visible.com.au, VISIBLE. Hit me up with an email if you like. And there's no right or wrong answer, but there's a lot out there on the internet. There's a lot you can learn about podcasting. But if you just follow those steps, you'll be ready to put something to market and maybe follow the dream that you've had. Like the dream I had to start podcasting. I mean, before, as I said, I had a failed podcast in 2015. I really wanted to start like probably 2 years before that. And then that failure set me back and I didn't start again for another 2 years. It's crazy to me now. I can't believe it. But maybe you've had that same dream, that same goal, for 2 years, for 4 years, maybe only 2 months. But podcasting is only growing, and there is no better time than now. So if you like what you heard today, check out one of my interviews maybe. Look in the episode Unlocking Your Permission to Succeed with Sophie Budd. Sophie, a good friend of mine, went from being a cook with a dream to a business owner working with artists like Adele, and she's got some other crazy stories. Look, she's an unbelievable human being, and I honestly would recommend you going and checking out her stories on how she I guess, went and followed her dream and achieved what she wanted to do in business, despite, let's say she had no business in being there, but she found a way and she succeeded, and she's been able to work with some amazing humans in the process. So good friend of mine, Sophie Budd, check out that episode, Unlocking Your Permission to Succeed. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, guys, and found that informative around the 6 things you must consider when starting a podcast this year. And hit me up. And until next time, ciao.